Okay, we are going to start with absolute value equations for lesson 4. And first thing is, you have to make sure the absolute value expression is isolated. And we'll talk about that when we go to solve them. And then you set the inside, meaning the inside of the absolute value, equal to both the positive and negative number from the other side. And that will make sense when we do one. And then you solve both equations. And you write your answer as a solution set. So you have x equals, then you have these fancy little things here. I'm not really that particular. It's just, you need to know that that's what a solution set looks like. I can't even really draw them, but it's not a big deal if you use commas to me, as long as you know what solution set means. Okay, and so we know that absolute value means the distance from 0. So on a couple of these, obviously they're going to start out easy. Like we know the absolute value of 2, but here's how it works. So is it isolated? Yes, because it's just the absolute value. So then you set that part equal to the positive and negative number from the other side. So you set x equal to 2 and x equal to negative 2. And then you solve it, but on this one, there's nothing to solve. So that is your answer then. X equals negative 2 and 2. And you put them in order from negative to positive usually, but it doesn't matter really. Okay. And you can try to make those little fancy things if you'd like. Okay, same thing. M is isolated, so M equals 14, and M equals negative 14. So M, I'm about ready to write X, equals a solution set of negative 14. That's negative 14 and 14. Okay, next one. So 5z is isolated because there's nothing else. So we're going to set 5z equal to 40, and then 5z equal to negative 40. Now this one, now you'll have to solve. So we're going to divide each side by 5. So we get z equals 8. Divide by 5. We get z equals negative 8. So our solution set is negative 8 and 8. I'm just going to use parentheses. Next one, negative 7a equals 28. And negative 7a equals negative 28. Divide by negative 7, we get negative 4. Divide by negative 7, and we get a equals 4. So it's negative 4 and 4. Now, it's not always going to work out that they're both the same number. Okay, now we have, it's isolated again. And so we have d plus 1 equals 8, and d plus 1 equals negative 8. Minus 1, you get d equals 7, and then minus 1 over here, and you get negative 9. So there's a great example where they're not always going to be the same number. Now, they won't always be opposites. So if you test it out, if you put 7 back in here, absolute value of 7 plus 1 is 8. Put negative 9 in there. Negative 9 plus 1 is negative 8, and the absolute value is 8. So those work. You go ahead and pause it and do the next 3 on this page. Okay, if you go back and check your answers here, number 6, we had negative 1 and 7. Pause it if you need to look at them longer. And 7, we had negative 9, 8, and negative 11, 6. I did not work that one out because I feel like you shouldn't really have any problems. So, what if there is stuff outside the absolute value? So on these, they were all isolated. On these, if you notice, the C also has a plus 2 on the outside. So we have to get rid of that, so we're just left with the absolute value. So we would minus 2 on each side and get 10. And then we bring this down. And then we do what we did before. So C equals 10, C equals negative 10. So negative 10, 10 is the solution set. On this one, we're going to add 8, and that gives us 3. And so then we have y equals 3, y equals negative 3. Negative 3, 3 is the solution set. Okay. How do we get rid of the 6? This means to multiply. So we're going to divide. And we're left with the absolute value of 4. So I already know then for that one, since it's a single, I know my solution set's going to be negative 4 and 4. Okay, again, we're going to divide by negative 2. So we have z plus 3. And now, I should put that on there. And now that that's isolated, now we have to remember to set each of them, we set it equal to the positive and negative of the number on the right. So we have z plus 3 equals 7, and z plus 3 equals negative 7. So z equals minus 3, so that's 4. And z equals minus 3, so that's negative 10. So there is our two answers. Okay, so we just keep doing the same thing where we have to isolate. And they just get harder. So on number 13, first we're going to get rid of that 6 on the bottom. So the opposite of dividing by 6 is timesing by 6. So we're going to times by 6 because those cancel out. Times by 6, so we get 18 over here. And then we have the absolute value of this. Do not forget to carry that down. And then we have 2w minus 4 equals 18. And 2w minus 4 equals negative 18. And then when you solve them, you should be getting negative 7 over here and 11 over there. There's your two answers. I'm not going to solve the equations because that we should already know how to do. Okay, the next one, I was going to erase that stuff there. There we go. Okay, so on this one, we see that negative 10 is being multiplied by the absolute value, but we also have a minus 3. So we are going to get rid of the minus 3 first. So to do that, we're going to add 3. And so adding 3 here makes that 80. And then I'll just drop all this so you can see h plus 5. And then we're dividing by a negative 10. Divide by negative 10. That gives us negative 8. Absolute value of h plus 5. So we have h plus 5 equals 8. Whoops, I did that wrong. That should be a negative 80. So then that makes that a plus 8. Okay, so that equals 8. And h plus 5 equals negative 8. And so our answers are 3 here and negative 13. Okay. 15 and 16. Again, go ahead and try to pause it if you want, or you can follow along with me and then do the homework on your own. So for 15, I'm going to add 6 first and get 1, 12. And then I'm going to bring down this because then I'm also going to divide by 7. And that gives me 16. And then that is the absolute value is isolated. So I know that I'm going to do 4n plus 8 equals 16 and 4n plus 8 equals negative 16. And my answer should be 2 and negative 6. Number 16. On this one, we are going to add 24 first. And so that is going to give us a positive 3. I'm going to write this over further. That's going to give us a positive 3 over here. And I'm going to bring this down here. So we have 3 halves times that absolute value. And so timesing by 3 halves, we could divide by 3 halves, or when it's a fraction, you know that if we flip it and multiply it, it cancels out. Because all of these things cancel out to 1. So we're going to times it by 2/3. So now we're left with the absolute value of 4r minus 4. And I'm not bringing those down because then I know I can set it equal. So this cancels, that cancels, we have 2. So it equals 2. And then 4r minus 4 equals negative 2. And so our answers, we are going to get 4r, and then we're going to get equal 6. So we're going to divide by 4. And instead of getting a decimal number, you can just reduce 6 over 4 to 3 over 2. And that's that answer. And on this one, we're going to add 4. So we get 4r equals 2. And a lot of people are going to put 2 here because they see the 4 and the 2. But you're really dividing by 4. So r equals 1/2. So we have a half and 3 halves. Okay. So we have some special cases here. If you think about the absolute value of negative 6, is there anything that you can put in there that when you find the absolute value, it's going to be negative? And that would be no, because you always talk about distance in a positive form. So there's no number that you could put in there that would equal negative 6. So there is a null set again. It's not, you can't use it. Okay, and then on 18, if you divide by negative 3, you get negative 7 over here. And so you realize you can't, it doesn't matter what you do, you can't find the absolute value once it's isolated and this is negative over here. You can't find the absolute value of a negative number. So that's why back up here, if you noticed, I caught myself up here because that was negative 8. And that's how I knew I did something wrong, because I already knew that you can't take the absolute value of a negative number. Okay, so it is definitely important to go and do the homework over these things because practice makes perfect.